Hello, and welcome back to the presentation series on solution design and implementation for IT-based media facilities. In this presentation, we're going to focus on media asset management systems. What are they, and what do you need to consider as you integrate one in your system? MAMs have come to the fore because of the ever-expanding quantity of digital assets that need to be managed. The move to file-based workflows has created an explosion of digital files, and many companies continue to use standard Office software to manage these assets. But once you reach a certain scale, this just becomes unsustainable. And on top of that, the assets themselves and the asset metadata is stored across multiple systems. And file-based workflows are also empowering more complex collaboration, both within the enterprise and across facilities. And finally, the assets themselves are becoming more complicated. A single asset might have multiple language versions, multiple formats, even multiple edits. All of these challenges demand a media asset management solution to help bring order to the chaos. The MAM is critical because it sits at the center of all the production and distribution processes. Whenever a user or a service wants to touch some media, it's almost always going to need to communicate with the MAM. And this makes the MAM choice a particularly important one for your facility and highlights the importance of APIs and openness to facilitate integration with all your operations. We should, before we go too much further, define actually what a MAM is. And I say for us because the term MAM is used loosely, and you're going to find a very wide variety of solutions that come under this title. In fact, there's so many of them that many of the systems that are considered industry standard don't even show up until several pages into your Google search. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're focused on MAM systems that are targeted at broadcast, production, and post markets. And they normally include a number of key components. At their core is a media catalog. It's about cataloging the assets themselves and their associated metadata. There are a set of viewing tools of varying sophistication, from simple players to full nonlinear editing software. There is essence management that monitors a file system and tracks the actual video and audio essence files, and a number of services that perform different functions on the media. There are also a number of different types of MAM to fulfill different functions. Production MAMs are focused on facilitating work in progress. Archive MAMs, as their name implies, are for searching long-term archives. Enterprise MAMs are aimed at being the glue that stitches together all of the diverse operations of a company. So you might have many different islands of production, but you're going to have one enterprise MAM, which is the primary asset manager of the enterprise. There are business-to-business MAMs that are more aimed at external use, so by making a library visible to outside customers, for instance, with purchasing stock footage, and business-to-consumer distribution MAMs, which are the engines that sit behind the major online video services. And we can also do a fairly significant cut between on-premise and cloud-based MAMs. On-premise MAMs are essentially those MAMs where it is important to be attached to the local storage. So when we're talking about production MAMs, typically that'll be the case. You are looking at a storage pool that is really just too large, too expensive to upload and store in the cloud. Cloud-based MAMs are ones that are well adapted to the applications near the bottom, where you want to be customer access is a key part of the experience. As you look at selecting your MAM, consider how well its features match with the challenges and the type of application that we've already discussed. Start with scale. How many simultaneous users and how many assets are you expecting to manage? And make sure the vendor that you're looking at is comfortable with the scale that you're planning. And this may be large or small. You don't want a small system for something that's too large, but also you may it makes little sense to put a huge system in where, in fact, your needs are fairly limited. Openness and APIs. How easy is it to integrate the MAM with different systems? And what APIs exist? Are they standardized? Are they extensively used at other clients? And have they already integrated with systems that you use at your facility? Are you going to have to develop interfaces yourself? What is involved in developing those interfaces? Check on what Essence files as well are natively supported relative to your plans. Do they handle MXF or QuickTime? What about RED files or other digital file formats that are important to you? Can an individual asset reference multiple Essence files? Can it handle interleaved and separate audio? If you're going to be doing a language version, you want to pay particular attention to how you're going to design, for instance, between a single video asset and all of the different audio assets that might go with it. You want to know what type of tools are provided with the MAM, and do they match to the use cases that you need to address? What are the media services that they offer? Again, do they match to the different types of services that you're going to need? And you're very likely, either now or in the future, going to be putting in business process management of some kind. So does the MAM come with a business process manager? Can you integrate your own? Are there existing integrations in the marketplace? Important information to know. And then, very critical for something that is going to be a mission critical system for you, what is the quality of service? And don't just ask the generic question. You want to dig in and find out what failover mechanisms exist for each one of the individual sub-services. What are the downtimes? What is the potential data loss that might be associated with different types of failure? Make sure you educate yourself well on this. Let's look at some of these features in a bit more detail. Search is the core service of our MAM, so you want to spend a lot of attention here. So one of the most important decisions you're going to make is to how you're going to ensure the material is well annotated. If it isn't tagged, it's not going to be findable. But often at the point of ingest, operators don't want to take the time or don't have the necessary information to properly tag a clip. And you need to establish what fields are going to be mandatory, what fields are going to be optional, and how you build a workflow where early on the material is put in front of the right eyes to have it properly annotated with those mandatory fields. And since this is a critical area, this is also an area where different vendors can add value. They might be able to do some automated annotation, like using face recognition or project-specific rules to enter common fields. Some might be able to extract more data than others just from the file wrapper itself. And some have easier methods than others for entering the data in terms of the number of clicks, the facility of just dragging and dropping a tag, for instance. On the search side, you're probably going to be making a decision as to whether you're going to go with the core database search or you're going to add an indexing service such as Solr or Lucerne. These services, they do add complexity, but they also offer much higher performance and more features once your database starts to scale. And beyond that, look at time savers such as iterative searches and search suggestions and save searches. So really take a good look at how easy it is to annotate and find material in the system. A very critical part of the MAM is the streaming player that you're going to use to visualize each asset. It's going to be playing back a proxy or a low resolution version of the source format, and an early decision you're going to make is what will be that proxy format. A standard choice these days is H.264, around 1 or 2 megabits, but that's something you can dial up or down based on your specific requirements relative to storage space, network bandwidth, and your video quality needs. Video player performance is often neglected. In many systems, the player is a component that's been modeled on web-based performance expectations, but this is something you want to be wary of. For a lot of users inside your facility, you may be replacing a professional VTR experience where they have very smooth jog shuttle and frame accuracy. So you want to make sure you can match this to the largest extent that you can. So look at the speed of changing clips and shuttling around clips and frame accurate movement within the clips. You want to also see how you're going to handle audio. How many audio tracks can the player handle? If it's just stereo, you may end up finding that this is really not going to meet your needs. If you're going to do something like language versioning, you will have a large number of audio tracks. And for that, you'll also need to make some decisions around, do you want all of those audio tracks embedded in your proxy, or do you want to have independent audio and video tracks? That might be because different language versions come at different times and you don't want to have to be continually rebuilding the proxy. So each have their advantages and disadvantages, so decide this early. And similarly, you'll have the same kind of question coming up for subtitles. Don't ignore timecode. You're going to be adding markers onto your system, so make sure that the MAM extracts the appropriate timecode from the source clip and can display it appropriately in your viewer. And then these markers, they're either your mark in, mark out in classic logging, they may have commentary, or they're becoming more and more important as well for triggering different actions in online players, pre-rolls, post-rolls, different types of advertising. And beyond that, can you take those markers out to an NLE? What kind of import-export does it let you do? And from an integration point of view, you may want to use the viewer in your own pages. So you're not necessarily just going to use the interface provided by the MAM vendor. If you want to integrate the player or even the logging and storyboarding tools into your own pages, check whether that can be extracted from their UI and embedded. Essence management refers to the relationship between the asset and the video essence that it points to. So a number of design issues in this area are whether you want the system to be actively monitoring the file system. It offers the advantage that you're going to automatically update as files arrive or are deleted. There's also a performance impact if you're looking at a large number of files or a large number of folders. You want to make sure that the MAM understands all of the native formats that you're going to be using and ideally can extract the metadata. And we're not just talking about the video files, but also the audios, the subtitle, the graphics, even perhaps EDLs. If you are assigning multiple essences to the same asset, you're going to have some interesting configurations to do here, just to ensure that the essences match back the way that you expect them to. And yet again, up comes the question of interleaved audio and how you want to handle that. And archive is a key part of the MAM. Here you want to assess what type of archive solutions are supported. Can the MAM detect when a file's been archived, and does it have the necessary integration to allow users to directly archive or restore through the MAM itself? The MAM may offer a number of media services. If it's well architected, you should normally be able to make your own choices as to whether to use a built-in media service or connect to more dedicated products. But clearly you're going to have fewer integration headaches if you just use the vendor's own collection of services. So this is something that you want to use, most likely use. So these are just some of the examples of the types of service that you might find within it, but this will be the difference between one offer and another. Which one of these do they offer and which other services they might add in. We've talked quite a bit about connecting to other systems, so you're going to be exchanging data regularly, and there are a number of ways of doing this. So the first is watch folders again and so-called XML sidecar files. So if an asset's ingested by another system, it can place an XML file, which will contain the metadata associated with that file. And if that file arrives in a watch folder, the MAM can perhaps create a new asset with that metadata imported. It's a very simple system, but it's also somewhat unreliable since there's not a clear handshake where you can ensure that there's acknowledgement back to the provider to avoid the fact that either it's lost altogether or that duplicates are made because there was some confusion in the exchange or data loss in the exchange. A more reliable way of making connections is through SOAP or REST or another API. The XML in that case will be passed within the API call, and you can have that handshake at that point to acknowledge that data has been received or not received. This works well usually in synchronous cases. In particular, you can have the business process manager make the appropriate calls at the appropriate times. There can be some challenges in asynchronous changes when you don't know that a change has taken place. With an API, you can address this by polling, constantly asking if something has changed, but this creates a lot of unnecessary traffic and is also subject to error in some cases. So the way to address this is through notifications. You want to put together a messaging system with a persistent message store. So JMS, Java Messaging Service, is one example. There are plenty of others that let one system basically email another system to update it on the information that it has. As a mission critical system, make sure that you have the best tools for monitoring status. The MAM should come with a real-time health monitoring, and you want to evaluate the diagnostic and the logging tools available for tracking down problems. Ideally, when making updates, you want to ensure that you don't have to take the system down. So look at what kind of processes are available to perform hot software updates. MAM can be highly configurable. It's a blessing because it lets you build it to different needs, but it's also a curse because it can lead to errors and it can take a great deal of time to set up. So look at automated configuration tools. And reporting, of course, can be a great benefit of a MAM. Managers want to look at asset usage and key performance indicators, so make use of them. So as your design starts to take shape, look at the overall workflow and establish whether you're making the most of your MAM investment. To avoid multiple ingests of the same material, you want to make sure that you're either centralizing the ingest function or that you have the MAM federate searches across multiple storage locations. You want to avoid multiple metadata entries, so make sure that you bake that metadata entry into your ingest process, that you ingest metadata from the complementary systems that may have it, and or federate your search across multiple systems. You want to maximize your asset use. After all, this is about really making sure that everybody can quickly access all of the material that is available to them. So again, make sure the metadata is complete on ingest, and make sure that you capture all of the rights information and the usage information, and sometimes there are automated ways of doing that. Speed up your editing process and lower the costs of your editing, because you can use the MAM for simple logging and storyboarding rather than taking up an expensive editing seat. And think through all of the collaboration models that you need. So build in notifications so that the right team members are informed when updates are made to certain assets or at certain points in the process. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. So good luck with your project, and be sure to check out one of the other presentations that we have here. And if you'd like a more complete training, do send us an email at training@mcleandigitalmedia.com. Thank you.